Hello everyone. And thank you for being here. I'm here with my previous client, Anna. Anna and I worked together for, we put it at about a year and a half, I think. And Anna is just celebrating this weekish her 1 year and 3 month alcohol-free anniversary. Woo,
Ooh, okay. I love
girl! We are so old lady, like lamos. We're like, whoop, whoop, yeah.
Totally.
Anyways, all right. So welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing really well. Nice to see your face as always.
I know it is reunited. I love it.
Yes.
So, all right, we're going to spend most of our time today talking about Anna and I's work together and also her sober curious journey and just all that jazz along the way, healing, growth, challenges, benefits, all that stuff. And so I wanted to kick things off by asking what inspired your sober curious journey?
So I don't know what specifically led me there, but I think it was a combination of things. Like I can't say it's just one thing. I know it was a lot of things. Like I had many instances where my drinking got me into trouble. Thankfully, not with the law, where I've never gotten any DUIs
Mm-hmm.
or hurt anybody else, but I had hurt myself multiple times. I really struggled with my health um, when I was drinking. I noticed that I wouldn't just get a hangover; I'd get sick after, and then when I would get sick, it would be like a chest cold that would last for weeks upon weeks, going into months, and it was just excessive. And I noticed the pattern just kind of following me throughout the years, and I was sick of being sick and sick of hurting myself. I had torn my ACL, not when I was drinking, thankfully, but after I had recovered from that.
Mm-hmm.
I was at work and I had been drinking after I got off my shift, and then I went to leave work and had every intention of driving myself home. And I was not fit to drive. I know that. And I had my skateboard with me. I was going to skate to my car and then drive home. But then I fell off my skateboard and I twisted my knee so badly that I had thought at the time that I had torn or damaged the ligaments that I had just had repaired and
Oh.
had just recovered from after surgery. So I had to put myself aside and call my partner at the time and say, hey, I hurt myself and can you please come get me, because I not only hurt myself so badly I don't think I can drive, but I am also drunk and I can't drive because of that as well. And needless to say, it was not a very happy conversation, but I did get picked up. And that was a huge wake up call for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know. So many things, so many red flags along the way where we're like, it's fine. I always say too, whenever I'm talking about how I drank, like I was a binge drinker, I didn't really have a rock bottom moment. And then I'm like, wait a second, I had like many rock bottom moments. I just didn't stop drinking right after them?
Yeah. Or it's so normalized that the things that we think are okay or so oh it's just a hangover, or it's just me drinking to an excess to the point where I'm throwing up for hours and then I wake up next to the toilet in the morning, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that that are normal to most people, and oh, whatever. Or they'll think oh, hair of the dog, here, just start drinking again, or
Oh God,
puke
yeah.
and rally
I
type
was the
stuff.
queen of hair of the dog, like queen.
Yes. Oh yeah. And it's
I would like
fine.
shamefully search for wounded soldiers the next day, like legit.
Yes, and I've seen people do that, and I thought it was gross, but I was never oh, like this is this is bad. Like, I need to
Disgusting.
not be around these people. Look at what they're doing, and who am I surrounding myself with? I didn't think about
Yeah,
that. I was just like, ew.
serious. Yeah, like come on. But yeah, I know. It is. It's very many extreme behaviors around drinking that are completely normalized. And I think in the moment I would laugh off so often things that now I look back, I'm like, I'm lucky that I survived.
Totally. I feel that so much too. I mean, I'm so lucky that I didn't like crash my car or get a
Mhm.
DUI and have to do jail time or like all these things that could have happened, and I knew that they could have happened. And I did my
Mhm.
best not to drink and drive, but it still happened.
Mhm.
And I'm not proud of that, and I'm grateful that it didn't like turn into something worse, but it definitely could have. I mean, and that's another thing that I feel like is so normal. It's like, oh, I've only had a couple drinks, I'm fine to drive. And you're not fine to drive. You've just been lucky that you didn't get caught or that you didn't
Yeah.
hurt anyone or yourself, you
That's
know?
so true. And I think that's another thing that's really normalized. Even just having a couple drinks and then getting in your car, it's like, how is that even normal? I mean, we're driving sometimes when you think of how unsafe driving is to begin with, it kind of makes
Yes.
you nervous about getting out and going in your car, but truly it is. And then on top of it, just like, oh, you just had a few drinks, it's fine. And
Yeah.
that's exactly true. When someone gets a DUI, I forget what the statistics are, but that's something crazy, the amount of times that people have statistically driven drunk prior to actually receiving a DUI. So
Oh, yeah.
many times. It's almost never someone's first time ever drinking and driving, the one time they get a DUI.
Oh, I believe it. And then I've had so many friends that have gotten not just one, but two and three DUIs.
Mm.
And so
I
I was
I just
always,
have
what?
had a I have I had a bad year when I was like 20. Yeah,
Yeah.
not
So
good.
I was always really worried about that. And I always encourage my friends to not drink and drive and encourage myself to not drink and drive. And that was one thing that really stuck in my mind. And every time I had a friend get a DUI, it was like,
Mhm.
okay, Anna, like you really
Did a
need to think
lot
about this.
did a lot of people you know get DUIs growing up? Like, how do you feel like it's a frequent or rare occurrence amongst the people you grew up with?
Oh, I mean, not necessarily like the people I grew up with, but my friend group. When I first started talking to you and working with you,
Mhm.
it was. I mean, there were so many friends that I had that had one, two, or three DUIs.
Wow.
I mean, my brother struggled with it, and he had gotten two or three DUIs over the course of his driving history, and and so that was one person close to me that I grew up with that definitely did have a DUI. So it was prevalent throughout my life, and then more and more as like I hit my 20s and like my friends group expanded, and so it was a regular thing I saw, and I always was worried for myself about getting that, and just
Mhm.
because I avoided it doesn't mean I didn't take those chances, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I know. So many people that I grew up with, I feel like DUIs were pretty prevalent because, I mean, we lived on an island, so it was pretty easy to get caught, but still, it was definitely, I feel like one in every four people had a DUI growing up.
Oh yeah. And
That's
that's another thing that's
terrible.
weird that it's normalized. Like, oh, gotta go to my DUI class, and then like the money involved in it, it's like $5,000 to $10,000 or more, and all these other like legal fees that go along with it and such. Like, I had a friend that had to who was on house arrest because of it, had the
Oh,
like whole ankle collar or ankle bracelet and everything. Like, I was like, oh
mhm.
my gosh.
Yeah. That's gnarly. All the stuff you have to do. It is. And they make it really challenging. And then, yeah, still, I had to go through it all twice. I had a really bad year when I was like 20 where I got arrested literally 3 times that year.
Wow.
Um, Twice were DUIs and one was from just kind of drinking in public. That's a long story. I should tell it sometime on the podcast because I might have actually in the past. I forget if I've told it on the podcast. Needless to say, yeah, I had a pretty rough year, but it is quite the rigmarole that you have to like go through. You have to take DUI classes, you have to, which are weekly for something like 16 weeks, and then you have to pay all different types of fees, understandably so.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was definitely a process. I didn't have my license for probably 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, I saw my brother go through that where he couldn't drive for a long time because he had his
Mm,
driver's license revoked due to
yeah.
DUIs. So,
But
that
I
was like,
still kept drinking after that.
oh yeah,
Because
yeah,
that
and that's
wasn't rock bottom, apparently.
yeah.
So tell me about, okay, because I feel like this is one thing a lot of people struggle with is like when to know when to get help and when to get support. And especially in this realm of gray area drinking, where it's like not as if you were a full blown alcoholic. And what inspired you to kind of reach out and get support?
I had tried unsuccessfully over and over again to do it myself,
Mhm.
basically, and like where I mean, I never tried to go to like any AA classes. I just didn't necessarily feel like the program fit like who I am as a person. Like I'm more of like a holistic and spiritual person than a religious person, so I was always kind of concerned about like the religious aspect tied to AA. And I know that they're supportive in ways where like they encourage you to like kind of do your own like like use your own religion or something like that, whether you're Christian
Mhm.
or not, you know. But I just didn't feel like that kind of fit me, and so I never tried that. But I just always tried to kind of do it myself, where I would just like say I'm not gonna drink and drive, and I'm gonna count how many drinks I'm gonna have. So I'm not gonna have more than this many. Like I know my limit is like three, and then once I get past that, it's it's a recipe for a bad night, basically.
Yeah.
And there were times where I was good about it, and I would drink less, and I would only drink on certain days, like maybe on once or twice a week, or you know. But then it always grew and grew and grew,
Right.
and I just realized that I had grown up learning how to like drink in a way that was so unhealthy. I just didn't know how to like, I guess, hit the reset button and control it in a
Mm.
meaningful way, in a regular way. And I mean, it just made sense. Like when I first started drinking, I learned how to drink by binge drinking. That was how I was taught to drink, basically. And that's how the people around me would drink. They would just drink and drink to excess. And like some people were better at like managing it, maybe, or at least on the surface level. But I struggled to manage it over the years, and I noticed that I just would always wind up being binge drinking, and I could just never control myself with alcohol in a way that like I felt comfortable having it in my life regularly. And
Right.
so I started. I stumbled across like a few sober curious accounts, and like that's how I found you on Instagram. I just I don't know if I like did a search or like maybe it was like a dry January thing, because I know
Mm.
I found you, or like I started following you around like the beginning of the year in 2022, and then I reached out to you like end of March because I had just started following you and I liked your content, and I
Mhm.
thought, oh, I like this girl, like feel I like her style. She seems like very like laid back and fun and what you know like relatable. And so
Mm.
I just realized that the where I was at in my life, like the people around me, my partner, like even though they wanted the best for me and like loved me, cared for me, and wanted like to support me, they just didn't know how to support me in a way that would truly help me like cut drinking out or cut it down in a meaningful way. So that's what led me to like reaching out to you, was just I felt like in a place where I didn't have the support that I I felt like I could be successful in not drinking anymore. And I didn't even know if I wanted to quit drinking completely. When I first reached out, I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know if I want to be sober, like sober from
Yeah.
alcohol. That sounds kind of bad. Sounds like not fun. But but I did want to change my relationship with alcohol, and I did want to like do better for myself. And I was sick of being sick all the time from like dragging my immune system in the dirt every time I drank, and then getting sick, and all these things that were happening, hurting myself and getting sick, all these things like I knew were directly related to my the way I drank and
Yeah.
alcohol in general. And I didn't feel good when I drank. For some reason, like I would go straight from like one drink, like would make me feel terrible. I didn't even get like that good buzz feeling. I
Yeah.
always just felt like a hangover immediately almost. So I
Yeah.
I got to a point where I was like, why am I doing this? I don't even like it that much. I don't
Oh
know.
my god.
It doesn't taste
I
that
know.
great. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so funny what you said about when we first started working together, you didn't even think you didn't want to drink ever. And I have like a wave of clients now that kind of all started around that same time. And it's just, it's so hilarious to think back because now you're all, like a year plus sober. And it's just so funny thinking back to the beginning of working together with you all and just moving through those phases of um kind of like ambivalence towards that you wanted to change your relationship with alcohol, but it was like a sticking point with giving it up completely that eventually you all got to, and so did
Yeah.
you.
That
And
was
so
the
really
best part.
cool to see the evolution.
Yeah, totally. And then that was the best part about working with you, was I never felt like you were pushing me to do anything that I didn't feel like doing. Uh, you were always like so supportive towards me, like or with me, like working together. Like I always felt like it was something that I came to the decision to, but it was something that you like guided me towards. But I never felt like, oh gosh, Katie's pushing me to do this. I'm not comfortable. It was like, I'm ready. Yeah. And like, I don't know, like, or you would
Yeah.
like challenge me in a meaningful way that I just felt comfortable. You're like, do you feel like you could take a month off? And like, if I like made a mistake, or not made a mistake, but like if I had a moment where like I drank, I never felt like, oh my god, I can't tell Katie or she's gonna be
Mhm.
mad at me, or I don't know. I always
Yeah.
felt like comfortable, like, and supported, like working with you. So that was nice. Like, and
Yeah.
I felt like that helped me get to where I am at now.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful for people to come to the decision on their own and just to create that space. It's funny because I know a lot of people that start talking to me about working together and then they don't. And I think it's because a lot of times I can tell that it's a hesitation towards, like, I don't know if I want to stop drinking right now. And it's just funny because I have so many successful clients that I'm like, yeah, a lot of people don't think they want to stop drinking when we start working
Yeah.
together. And then it graduates that point for a lot of people. And I don't know if there's anyone at this point that still drinks anything. I'm trying to think of like any of my clients. But yeah, so really cool just to kind of be, and I love watching the the sort of developing of awareness and watching people go through the process is really amazing. So, speaking of which, I want to talk next about what transformed in your life when you were able to eliminate alcohol. What benefits did you see?
Well, I noticed a big change like pretty quickly in weight loss. I had kind of I had struggled to lose weight. It's something that I always like wanted, not necessarily to like lose weight because I was so uncomfortable with my body. I love my body, and I always felt beautiful, and like and that I was, the most comfortable I could be with myself. But I there was definitely goals, and I felt like that for my build for my personal self. I felt like I had additional weight I was carrying. And it was wild to me how quickly that fell off. And people noticed, and they were like, "Wow, like what are you doing? What are you
Yeah,
doing different?" I
like, "I'm not
was
drinking." They're like, "Okay, fuck you."
exactly. I was like, well, you're not gonna like this, but I quit drinking, and that's literally it. I mean, I did already have a pretty healthy lifestyle, so I think that played a part in it. But it was wild to me. Like I lost 20 to 25 pounds within 3 months of like not drinking, and at first I just kind of like I think like when we first started working together, I didn't like stop drinking completely. Like when we first met, it was like a little bit at a time, but I did really like cut
Mhm,
out drinking by a lot when we first started working together. And then like beyond 6, I think it was like 8 months, something around like October time. Like we started working together in April, and then by October, you had challenged me to like take the rest of the year off from drinking completely. And
mhm,
I agreed with you. I was like, yeah, you know what? I could use the emotional time and space off of like going through the holidays. They're always usually kind of a difficult time for
mhm.
me. Um, my like because of like when I had lost my dad, and it's always like around that time. It's his birthday. It's the time of year he passed. All these things, like there's so many like emotional things that kind of happen in that time and
Yeah.
space that like it makes it difficult for me to kind of deal with the holidays. And so it was a healthy challenge for me to like be able to like take that time off. And then from there, that's when I decided I don't want to drink anymore. I'm done with drinking. I
Mhm,
mean, like, I like to say forever, but like, I mean, who knows what? But I mean, honestly, I just can't see myself going back to it. It just don't feel like it holds any value for me anymore. It's such a like a waste of money. I'm just like drinking carbs and calories that like are meaningless to me, and I saw what it did to my body, to my heart, to my like emotional well-being, and then my physical well-being. So I now, like that I'm on the other side of it, I can honestly say like it does not serve any truly good to myself anymore. And so why would I want to choose that?
mhm,
And like I said before, like I didn't even really enjoy it that much. The taste, that was one thing I was like, oh, but what if there's something good I want to try? And there have been things that came out that I was like, oh, like I would have liked that for sure, but
mhm,
it's not worth it to me anymore. Like it's a sacrifice I'm not willing to make because I know how bad it made me feel, how much it like reduced me, and like how much it like
mhm.
brought me down on a vibrational level like throughout my life. So
Yeah.
I feel comfortable and confident saying like I don't need it anymore, and I don't want it anymore, and I don't need people in my life that are uncomfortable with me making that choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so pretty powerful that you were able to have your challenge go through the holidays because that's is a really hard time for a lot of people, not only just because it's triggering typically for any sentimental or nostalgic ties to loss or grieving that people have over the holidays, but also because the holidays are stressful, and also because you have to spend a lot of time around family, and also because you have lots of festivities and social events centered around alcohol. So it's really like I call October to January the gauntlet for people with drinking because you start with Halloween, and then it's Thanksgiving, and then Christmas and
Mm-hmm.
New Year's. And so after getting through that, I could imagine you're like, damn, okay, well then, if I can do that, I can definitely do anything. And
Totally.
so, yeah, I know earlier before we hopped on the call, we were also talking about the opportunity that removing alcohol provides when it comes to like getting to know yourself and how it's impacted you in terms of dating and your standards and what you're looking for. And can you share a little bit more about all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that really stood out to me now that I'm single and like I ended a pretty like big relationship when I first started working with you. I was married, and then I went through the whole process of divorce, and now it had become official. And then I went from my divorce directly into one relationship, and then another one. And throughout that process, you were so supportive, and I never felt judged, even though the circumstances were a little insane. But I had to go through all of those things to like get to
Mhm.
where I'm at now, and now I'm like growing more and more comfortable with being alone. And that was one thing that like really stuck out to me that you asked me. You're like, do you think you're afraid to be alone, or that you like need to be in a relationship to be happy? And I was like, no, I'm totally comfortable being alone. I love being alone. I don't
In that voice.
value my
Oh,
alone.
no. I'm fine.
It's fine. Everything is fine. Um, oh my gosh. No, I
That's
was
it.
not. I didn't know. I didn't know at the time though. I feel like I was truthful in answering that because at the time I was eating my own BS and telling myself like I am okay with being alone. But in hindsight, I really like had some time to like think about it all, and I had never been alone, and I had never really truly understood what it meant to be alone and to live completely independently. Even though like I was single for a time before like I met my partner, my ex-husband. I was single for like a year and a half. I was dating the entire time. I went on 100 horrible first dates, and
Mhm.
so I learned a lot about myself and like what I want in relationship. And then I met my partner, and like we were together for 10 years, and then I went from that relationship to another. And even before that all happened, I was in a long-term relationship, and then before that I had my family. I was living at home. I was a teenager, and then I was a kid, so I'd always had
Mhm.
either family or like friends or roommates that I live with, or a boyfriend or partner of some sort that I had like lived with and depended on in some way or another. And now, like now at 35 years old, I'm living alone, truly like by myself, completely independently. And I didn't think that, excuse me, I didn't think that I could do that before. I didn't, I didn't think that I was capable of living alone, supporting myself fully by myself. So,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, you're good. Get it all out, honey.
Yeah.
It is. It's really a interesting how even in the process of eliminating alcohol, there's so many other distractions we can use to just keep ourselves from facing ourselves. And those distractions can take the shape of alcohol, but also dating and just continuing to go from one relationship to another so that we don't have to actually sit with those uncomfortable feelings that we're trying to escape with one form of like self medication or another. And so, yeah, and it can be hard to kind of address all of those things at once, too. So, I think you gave yourself some time without alcohol, and maybe you didn't quite feel ready to address the uh, serial monogamy yet, but you got there. That's what
Yeah.
matters.
I'm dead. Um, yeah, I mean, it really like also like what you said about distractions is like it's not only just distractions, but like you like numb yourself with these things. Like
Hmm.
you you're able to like put the blinders on and focus on these other things so much more. Uh, um so it's like you think like, oh yeah, like I'm doing all this healing, I'm looking inside, I'm taking care of myself all because I'm not drinking. But then you actually like realize like, oh, I'm actually, now that I'm not numbing myself or distracting myself with alcohol, I realized that I was doing it in other ways with
Yeah.
relationships, with
Alcohol is just that gives you the ability to see what you're doing too. It's like then there's all the things like it's not just removing alcohol, it's removing alcohol and then addressing all the shit that you were masking it with.
yeah, yeah, I had never thought about like doing any shadow work or like or maybe if I thought about it, I was never actually like ready to like do anything like to dig up any past stuff. I couldn't even see any of that past stuff because I was masking it with everything else and distracting myself with alcohol and relationships and social media.
Mhm.
Towards the end of the year, last year, I decided to take a break from social media, and that really helped me. Like, oh, now I don't have a relationship, now I don't have alcohol, and now I don't have social media. I really had to like face myself in a big way. It was like, whoa.
You're like, "Holy shit, this is surreal." Yeah, it's a lot, I know. I think we kid ourselves a lot with the way that we try to convince ourselves anything that you're doing for, hours at a time and investing so much emotional energy into like a relationship. And what you had said earlier too that I think was really important and what we were kind of talking about before we got on the podcast was how to really taking this as an opportunity to get comfortable alone because once you're comfortable alone, you're only joining a partnership that complements and adds value to you as opposed to when we're in that state of like desperation or searching for a partner. It's like any fucking Tom, Dick, or Harry will do. You're like, okay, you're fine. You have like a million red flags, but
Yeah,
we'll just go ahead and forge to this situationship.
yeah, yeah, and I sure did that, and oh my gosh, yeah. I learned that I really put myself aside in a lot of ways when I'm in a relationship, and I struggle a lot with people pleasing, and
Mhm.
so there were a lot of things that I realized I need to work on this first before I'm ready to jump into any relationship with anyone else other than myself, and that how important it is to like kind of deal with your own issues before you are really ready and
Yeah.
able to like kind of be in a partnership with anyone else.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And that's exactly why I say until you do the inner work, you're only gonna, attract a partnership that kind of matches your wounds, I feel a lot of the time. And so that's why it's really important to kind of do that inner work so you can come into that relationship and you're not coming from a place of desperation or lack or scarcity. And you're coming from a place of I'm fulfilled and whole all on my own. So I'm going to settle for nothing more than the perfect fit or nothing less than the perfect fit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. Tell me about and us, everyone listening, about what were some of the biggest challenges and obstacles for you going alcohol free, maybe that you didn't expect or that you
Well,
did, just the biggest ones.
like challenges or obstacles. I mean, I feel like the obstacles were like the relationships, and I put those in place there. Like, and letting go. Letting
Mhm.
go is hard, and you don't want to let go. It's hard to like change. Change is scary. So I think it's like letting go and making changes
Mhm.
and being okay with that and accepting that. Um, I think that's like the hardest part. But once you do and you like embrace the changes and you just allow yourself to let go, it makes room for something really beautiful to happen.
Oh, yeah, I
And
love that.
yeah, definitely. And that's what I've discovered.
Yeah, you kind of have to let go and clear space to make room for new things before they arrive. And yeah, in growth, a lot of shifts happen and that can impact our relationships a lot too. So dealing with that is challenging.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, and yeah, so it's just like, don't be afraid to like let go of the things that are not serving you. That's the thing. Like, we hold on to these things like desperately, clinging on
Mhm.
to them, even though we know they're not good for us. And it's like, why do we do that? I don't know. Because we're just so afraid of change. But when the change happens, it's like, oh my gosh, this is way better. Way
Yeah, I know, and that's why it's so hard because I think as humans, we're so conditioned towards the familiar that we'll stay in the most toxic familiar situation over the healthiest new unfamiliar situation. And
Yeah.
just we don't even know what we're missing and we're subjecting or and you almost don't even know how unhappy you are. I feel like when
Yeah.
I think back a lot of the times to when I was drinking, it's so funny. We had a spiritual medium. I love psychics and all the spiritual stuff. So anyways, probably like 5 years ago, I was definitely no, maybe it was more than 5 years ago, but I was, like, in the peak of misery in my drinking and working in, like, restaurants, and I was getting my master's, but I was like, "How am I even gonna use this? What's happening?" And I remember we saw this spiritual medium and she said like, "Oh, you've been really unhappy for the past few years and you're really unhappy right now and you're slowly coming out of it and things are going to get better and stuff." And at the time I was almost offended, like, "What do you mean? I'm really unhappy right now." And now looking back, I'm like, "Bitch, you were so miserable."
Totally. Oh my
Like,
gosh.
so
It's,
miserable. It's like we don't even know we're sitting in a pile of shit when we're in it, and it's like till you get out of it, you're like, "Damn, I wish I changed that sooner."
yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like we settle for less so much. And it's like, why? Like, no, you don't have to. What? Because the situation you're in is not that bad? Or is it really? I don't know. And then I realized that I was just not ready to be honest with myself for a long time.
Yeah.
And then when I really was able to be honest with myself, that's when my life started changing. And even
Mhm.
though it was uncomfortable and difficult, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm so glad I did that for myself. And I'm so glad I did make the changes. And I mean, people would ask me like how I was doing, and I would like kind of compare myself to like a phoenix. I'd just be like, yep, it feels like everything's on fire right now, but I'm okay. And I'm just ready for my new feathers to come back in. And
Yeah.
so still on fire, but I'll be okay once
You're like, "I
I
think
am,
I'm gonna be I'm rising.
once I get
I'm
my
on
new
fire but
feathers.
rising." Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I wanted to highlight one thing you said too that I think was really important was that when we talked about the pattern of serial monogamy and kind of like going from relationship to relationship and finally realizing that. And when you let go of those relationships, because there were red flags and whatnot, that
Yeah.
you d- finally became aware of, like, okay, I'm using relationships to distract myself. I'm going to let go of this. You also said you could feel your manifestation potential increase. Things just came to you with much more ease and flow. And it just felt like you were in a good like state of receiving. And I think that is so funny how we can see that happen when we let go of things that aren't serving us. It's just the universe's way of positive reinforcement, I feel like.
Totally. It's like you just now like I mean, I have so much more like clarity that I'm able to see it differently, and I don't have like someone else's like negativity clouding me. And like and I mean, like, even if you're not like identifying as an empath, I feel like if you have a partner or someone in your life that is super negative, e- regularly or even somewhat, like, it does affect you. And
Mhm.
I thought like, oh, I can put up with that, I could understand that, or I could like see how, but I feel like I do take a lot of that energy on. And when I have somebody in my life that is like that, I unconsciously do take on that like type of attitude where like I become more judgmental towards others or negative towards others or negative in general and have these like negative thoughts that I would never have normally because I have somebody in my life that is like that, that is,
Mhm.
you know,
It's rubbing
put,
off on you.
yeah, has that little flow or feed of these like
And
things.
yeah, and it is like once you remove alcohol too, it's a lot harder to be around people when you're just not on the same wavelength as all at all because you're no longer kind of drinking to just dull down your own sensitivity to being out of sync with them. And there's nothing wrong with being on different wavelengths, but there is when you constantly have relationships in your life where you're forcing yourself to be on the same wavelength through alcohol and then you stop drinking. It's like, okay, well, that's why relationships shift, especially when the main focus was alcohol. And some of them shift to maybe just like hanging out with less, or, it's not a relationship you're going to spend 110% of your time with. It's going to go down to like 20% or something. But it definitely is kind of a rude awakening when you're realizing how sensitive you are to the energy of others too without alcohol.
Yeah,
Especially when you
totally.
people pleased your way into like half your relationship and you're like, okay, gonna have to make some changes now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like dating while I was like exploring my own sober curiosity and whatnot helped me like or I helped reinforce boundary setting, which
Hmm.
I wasn't very good with in the past. And so that was helpful, even though like I stumbled my way into a couple toxic relationships. I learned a lot about myself and what I like want for myself in relationship, and then I also learned that it is easy to date when you're not drinking. You could just tell people like, yeah, I don't drink. You just set that precedence, and if people are expecting you to not drink, then it's easier to kind of like go into it that way. And also it helps like kind of eliminate like someone who won't be supportive, because if somebody sees that you don't drink and they don't like that, they're they're not going to match up with you, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Like, and that's I feel like a healthy like indicator right off the jump. If somebody's not going to be supportive of you not drinking, then is that really someone you want in your life? And like same goes with friends too. So it's taught me a lot like about boundary setting and self-respect, and like also showing me like the kind of people I want in my life and the kind of people I don't want in my life. So
Hmm.
it's been a journey, but it's been a good one.
Yeah. It kind of I say it's a top tier vetting process because
Hmm.
it's just easy if somebody is not supportive of you, not drinking, like, well, okay, bye. That was easy.
Yeah. All right.
So, all
Peace out.
right. One thing I wanted to touch upon because I feel is really important is the fact that you work in the hospitality industry. And I feel like that's a really tough place to be alcohol free. And I know for me, I worked in the hospitality industry for 10 years. I think I did a dry month or so when I worked in restaurants, but I remember it being really fucking hard, even just taking a month off working in restaurants. Obviously, there's a lot of alcohol around, it's heavy drinking culture. And
Totally.
so kudos to you, first of all, for going on a year and a half alcohol free, working in restaurants full time. And so, can you share some of your strategies or tips or what works for you working in that environment and staying alcohol
Yeah.
free?
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. When I first started my journey, like I was working at a sports bar and restaurant, whatever, but it was a heavy drinking culture. And
Hmm.
so I feel like that is very difficult to like be in that environment and not drink, especially when you're first getting into it. So for anyone that's like wanting to, like, just because you're making good money there doesn't mean you're happy. I was making the most money I think I ever made, but I was miserable. And it's not all about money. And just because you are making good money there doesn't mean you can't go somewhere else and make good money somewhere else that is more supportive. So don't be afraid to make the change just because where you're at now is good enough. Because when you start to think about it and see it for what it really is it really that good? And are you really that happy? And are these people really your friends? No, probably not. And so I got away from that and I moved to a new city and I started working at a family restaurant, family owned Italian restaurant, which serves, it has a full bar, has serves beer and wine, all the things, but it's it's a different like culture. It's more like have a drink with dinner kind of vibe, which may still not be supportive for some people. So if you have to change completely, like still there's things out there. You will still make the money. And like what I was saying earlier is like maybe your power of manifestation will grow and become more attuned when you're able to like step away from it, and you'll be able to like manifest the amount of money that you want to make even if you leave the culture altogether completely and switch careers completely. Don't be afraid to make the change because it could lead
Or
to your
you're
happiest.
yeah. Or you will have, 10 times more energy without alcohol and you'll be able to
Yeah,
like get creative, figure it out. You
yeah,
might uncover passions you didn't know you have. So it's like there's so
totally.
many.
That's one
But
thing I experienced a lot actually when I quit drinking. I wasn't hungover at work anymore, and so my capabilities at work grew tenfold. Like I was not forgetting people's orders or like making all these mistakes like I used to at work because I had a clear head. I had would wake up in the morning feeling great. I'd get to my shift on time. I wouldn't be making mistakes, so my tips got better and better. And then like the temptation has been there. I'm not gonna lie. Like there have been times where I've really wanted a drink, but I decided to not like allow myself to like give into that, because the reason that I wanted to drink was because I was stressed because of this thing or that thing. And I realized like I don't want to just drink because I want to put a band-aid on how I'm feeling. I want to feel the way that I feel 100%, and allow that to be okay and not just use alcohol to numb out that stuff, because that stuff is valuable and important. And if you don't feel it, then you're going to feel it eventually, and it just piles up. And so,
Mhm.
um, so I felt okay like working in the industry that I did. But it definitely helped change the environment for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, and would you say that once everyone kind of knows you don't drink, it's like a non-issue?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I usually don't share with my guests, like my customers at work. Like I won't
Mhm.
necessarily tell them that I don't drink, but when it
Oh,
does
I
come up.
mean more like your coworkers.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, with my coworkers, yeah, it's a lot easier. Like I told everybody at work, like I'm not drinking, and you would think like there would be more pushback, but honestly, it was like, oh, okay, cool. And the only thing that I think I struggled with a little bit, but thankfully, I maybe old enough or experienced enough and past this enough to be okay with it. But the FOMO, I could see somebody really struggling with, because when you don't drink and everybody knows you don't drink, people don't invite you to things anymore that you would normally get invited to. So your social life does change, but again, it's like I feel like for the better. And then when those things that I'm not getting invited to, it's those things aren't fun anymore, because when you're there at the bar and everybody's drinking and you're the sober one, you start to see people differently, and you start to like not enjoy it in the same way. So even
Yeah.
though you feel that FOMO, it's like the quality of like what you're doing is like
Low.
yeah, it's like I'm not really missing out on
Yeah,
that.
and then slowly you build like new relationships and community that you're just crowding out old behavior. But it is hard initially, even though like half those hangouts probably don't even feel in alignment anymore when you're not drinking. It's like that void, I think, of activity you used to participate in, not having anything and just being kind of emo at home alone.
Yeah,
But eventually, the emo time is good. It's necessary,
yeah.
and eventually you'll have friends again, I swear.
Yes, and embrace the loneliness. It's like think about why
Right.
you're feeling lonely, like, and it's okay to be lonely. It's not like this big scary thing. Like all of a sudden the loneliness creeps in and I'm gonna die. No,
That
it's
was
okay.
bad.
Like, don't feel like that. Like it's okay to feel lonely every once in a while, and
And
like also,
it stops feeling lonely when you face the fear of loneliness. It
yes,
eventually no longer feels lonely. It's like
no,
amazing. And now I'm truly never alone because I have a baby.
yes,
But I love being alone, and I
mhm,
definitely, when I first stopped drinking, felt a little FOMO, and everyone does. I mean, I think I don't have a client that hasn't felt like a little bit lonely in those stages and a
yeah,
little lost. And it's hard to, it's hard to have faith that when you make those hard decisions in the tough times, it's going to result in the person you want to become. But it really is like faith in those difficult choices that you have to have.
yeah, and it does help to be prepared too. Like if you're going to something that you know where people are going to be drinking, bring your kombucha, bring your sparkling waters, like, bring your thing that like makes you feel like included, and there's so many non-alcoholic fun beverages out there that like you posted recently that that's a growing industry, and for a good reason because people are realizing that it's okay to not drink and that it's better even. So there's so many
Yeah.
options, alternatives out there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
there's
so
things.
good. Yeah, so many things. And once you get over the hump of awkwardness, I
Mhm.
think I'm almost getting secondhand awkwardness thinking of my awkward self socializing in the beginning. But it's just funny because it's like slowly over time, you don't give a shit anymore.
Mhm.
And you just get to be yourself, and you don't, and it's so much better than it was when you had to depend on alcohol to not feel social anxiety, or you're constantly focusing on where you're going to get your next drink once you start drinking, or vacations are based all around where you're going to go get alcohol. And it's just so liberating once you get past the discomfort. But
Yeah, and you save so much money not
yeah,
drinking.
yeah,
Usually, I mean, I guess if you're spending tons of money on non-alcoholic drinks, sure, whatever, but live your best
yeah.
life. But if you're just drinking sparkling water, it's usually a lot cheaper than alcohol. So,
And you're
um,
really hydrated. So,
yes.
okay, I have a couple more questions before we wrap up, but one of them is, I think this is a good one. I was thinking of this recently. Like, what would I want to know when I was like thinking about giving up alcohol? What would I go back and tell myself now, knowing what I know now? So, I wanted to offer that question to you. Like, knowing everything you know now and reflecting back on, who you were, say when you signed up to work with me, like what would you tell her now?
I mean, don't be afraid. Like, don't be
Mm.
afraid to make the changes. That's the one thing. And I know I already said that earlier, but I mean, I feel like the biggest thing. People are so afraid of change. And I know change is scary, but it's okay to be afraid. And it's okay to do things that are different. And it's okay for people to leave your life. Because that's another thing that like can be really scary too, is like you think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose my friends, I'm gonna lose all these things. But at the end of the day, what you gain is so much more than what you lose. And so if I could just go back and tell me like anything, I'd be like, don't be afraid. It's gonna be okay. And like change is all right, And so
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
okay.
I
It's
love
gonna
that.
be okay.
That's
It's
probably what I
going to
would
get
say
better.
too. There's a reason you want to make these changes, so just make them and like trust
Yeah.
your inner guide.
Yes.
And I love that. Like just because it's new and different doesn't mean it's not 20 times worse. And the other thing I would tell myself is don't worry about what anyone else is doing, because just because everyone's doing it doesn't make it any less crazy, because people are out here doing all kinds of weird shit. Okay?
Yeah,
So don't compare
exactly.
yourself to anyone. And
Exactly.
then I wanted to ask too about um, with coaching and like how do you feel like you benefited from having a coach throughout the process for people who are like, should I get support? I don't know. Is Katie going to force me to be sober? Like all that stuff. Like what would you say was beneficial about working with a coach throughout the process?
It was just so helpful to have somebody that to talk to regularly that like is non-judgmental, that is super supportive, and knows what they're talking about, and like kind of had like has been through the process, like and yeah, just to like have someone on the regular that you can talk to, or that will challenge you, that will hold you accountable, but not
Mm,
in like a way that you feel uncomfortable with, that is like a way that like is supportive. And that accountability, you can give that to yourself, but I feel like most of us, when we're in that position of like I like want to quit drinking but I just don't know how, or I can't, or I haven't been able to do it myself, like it's okay to get support, and it's good, and just because you start something doesn't mean you have to like continuously do it for the rest of your life. I mean, it's like you can get support for a time, and then when you feel ready you can go off and do it, continue it on your own. But it's so helpful to have that, and then it's like you learn things about yourself that you don't even know that you're capable of. And
mhm,
so getting support would it really meant the difference between me drinking and not drinking. I mean, like maybe I would have gotten there by myself, but I feel like I wouldn't have gotten there as quickly as I have, and I don't know if I ever would have. And I think I would have just stayed in my situation, and had gone like I don't feel like I identify as an alcoholic or anything like that, but I definitely had alcoholic tendencies, and I was in line and on the path to become an alcoholic. And so having that support has not only taken me off that path, but like has like made me feel like I don't want that for myself ever.
mhm,
And I feel confident in saying that and knowing that I can continue forward in this with
mm. Yeah.
everything.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's so nice just to have the accountability, and it is like we were saying, a lonely process. And so I think that's really nice to have somebody who gets it, who's been there, who can usher you through it all. So, yeah, thanks for sharing, and
Yeah.
congratulations again on all of your alcohol-free time you're accruing. If you were to end on any like words of wisdom or advice or like tip that you would give to somebody on the fence or starting to think about if they're sober curious or not, is there anything that comes to mind that you would share?
Um, yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about getting help, get help, like in whatever way makes sense for you. In that, and there's so many different ways that you can get help. Like sometimes people think like the only option is going to AA, but there's so many options. And like, I started working with you, and you live in a different time zone in another state, and we just video chatted throughout the whole entire process, and I felt completely supported the entire time. Like, and we were able to like totally connect
Mm,
throughout the process. So if you're thinking about getting help, get help. Do it. Don't be afraid to do it. Again, don't be afraid. Just do
yeah.
it.
Stop being
Yeah.
afraid.
Yeah.
Anything else, Queen?
No, I think that's everything. I don't know.
Ah, that was
Oh,
so
I
fun.
wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, girl. Well, thanks for coming on. And everyone, thanks for listening to another episode. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.